Welcome to The Deep Dive. If you're an eye care professional, you've almost certainly been there. A parent, maybe a bit anxious, asking if their child's new glasses will, manage their myopia or maybe control it. Or perhaps you're reading a study and terms like myopia correction, myopia control, and myopia management just seem, well, all over the place. Used interchangeably, it can feel like you're trying to get a clear focus on something that keeps shifting, can't it? Today, we're diving into a really important journal article. It's aiming to bring some much needed clarity here. The title is Myopia Correction, Myopia Control, and Myopia Management Definitions and Recommended Usage. And this isn't just about being picky with words, it's about making sure we as clinicians are all speaking the same language, with each other, with patients, and even when dealing with regulations.
That's exactly right. The core problem, and the article really spells this out, is how often these terms get mixed up or used inconsistently. And that causes real confusion, not just for us practitioners or researchers, but maybe most importantly for the parents and the patients we're trying to help. So our mission today really is to clarify these distinctions, to help you, our listener, navigate those clinical talks and your decisions with more precision. Because honestly, when our terms are sharp, our patient care gets even better.
Absolutely. I think it's time we get a truly crystal clear understanding of these terms. See clearly through the jargon, maybe.
Okay.
So let's start by unpacking that confusion. The article kicks off by noting how myopia management and myopia control are used everywhere, but, the definitions get blurry. Why is this such a persistent issue?
It's a great place to start. The paper really stresses this isn't just some academic debate over words. Think about it in the real world. A patient hears myopia management from one doctor, meaning the whole comprehensive thing, and from another, maybe it just means getting glasses. That inconsistency, it can undermine trust, it can lead to missed chances for, really vital treatments. And the article points out the right term isn't one size fits all. It really depends on the context.
Context, okay. Like who you're talking to.
Exactly. Are you talking to parents,
Yeah.
writing for a journal, making marketing stuff, or navigating those tricky regulatory documents? It all matters. And then you even have different uses or understandings depending on the country you're in. It adds another layer.
Right. That context point is huge. It's not just what it means, but when to use which word. Now, this article, it isn't just a few experts deciding things in isolation, is it? They describe a pretty thorough process for reaching these definitions. Can you tell us about their method?
Yeah, and that's what gives it weight. It was really collaborative. They didn't just, dictate definitions. They did a deep dive into how these terms have evolved over the years in the literature and in clinics. And crucially, they talked to a lot of people, a really diverse group, representatives from different parts of the industry, the ones making the lenses, the drops, everything. Plus, a wide range of folks from the global myopia research community.
So a real consensus approach.
Pretty much. They wanted definitions that weren't just theoretically sound, but actually worked in practice and were, generally accepted by people actually doing the work. That grounding makes these recommendations really practical and hopefully useful.
Okay, that's good to hear. So let's get into the definitions themselves, starting with maybe the most basic one, but kind of the foundation. Myopia correction. How does the article define that?
Right, myopia correction. The definition is devices and interventions that correct the optical focusing errors of myopia to optimize best corrected distance visual acuity without providing any intended benefits in relation to slowing myopia progression or axial elongation.
Okay, so just fixing the focus, improving the vision clarity, nothing about slowing down the myopia itself.
Exactly, it's that traditional approach.
Yeah.
Just making sure someone can see clearly at a distance.
So think about talking to parents, especially those who remember just getting glasses themselves way back when. How does this definition of myopia correction help differentiate from what maybe they thought was management all along? Because for years, just getting glasses was the management, right?
Yeah, you've nailed a really key point the article tackles head on. They mentioned the NASEM report, that's the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. Apparently, that report sometimes used traditional myopia management to just mean single vision glasses. And the authors of this article argue, quite rightly, I think, that phrasing is just confusing.
Yeah, I can see that, traditional versus active management.
Yeah.
It's not immediately clear what the difference is.
Exactly. Imagine a parent hearing that. They might not get that traditional just means fixing the vision for now, while active means trying to slow down the actual disease progression. So, to avoid that confusion, this article strongly recommends using the term myopia correction. just for that traditional optical fixing approach. It draws a really clear line, helps parents understand, okay, these glasses help my child see now, but they don't address the progression or the long-term risks. It's all about setting the right expectations from the start.
That clarity is so important for expectations. Okay, so if correction is about the optics, then myopia management must be the bigger picture, right? What does the article say about that?
Oh, absolutely. It's much broader. The article defines myopia management as a comprehensive eye and vision care approach to myopia and pre-myopia. And that word comprehensive is doing a lot of work there. It really means a whole holistic strategy.
Right, and when you break down the components in their definition, it seems like myopia management really covers all the bases, doesn't it? It starts even before myopia is established, with prevention and risk assessment. Then, early detection, regular screening, and yes, optical correction is part of it.
Definitely still a part.
But then there's so much more. Lifestyle advice, getting outdoors more, maybe less screen time. And then the big one, timely interventions to actually prevent or control the progression, the axial elongation, plus ongoing monitoring refraction and axial length, and even managing potential complications way down the line. It's a lot.
It really is. It's looking at the condition across the patient's entire life. The article really stresses that myopia management should be used for these approaches that combine the correction part with all that other holistic care. The main goal isn't just clear vision today, it's actively slowing things down to cut the risk of those sight-threatening problems later on. And it's evidence-based, applied not just to kids who have myopia, but importantly also to those we identify as being at high risk, the pre-myopes.
Okay, so it's moving beyond just optics into actual healthcare for the eye.
Precisely, preventative and long-term healthcare.
All right, so correction is optical, management is comprehensive. That leaves myopia control. This feels like the most specific term. How's that one defined?
It is the most specific. Myopia control is defined as the clinical application of evidence-based interventions specifically intended to slow the progression of myopia and axial elongation. Now, the key thing here is that these interventions might do two jobs, like certain special contact lenses or glasses, that both correct vision and aim to slow progression.
Okay, dual function.
Right. Or they might only focus on slowing the progression. Think low-dose atropine drops. In that case, you'd still need regular glasses or contacts for the vision correction part. They'd be used together.
That difference is really important, dual role versus needing a combo. And for us clinicians, the article hammers home the need to monitor how well these interventions are working, using both refraction and axial length. There's a critical point there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely critical. The article is very clear. Refraction in isolation is not adequate evidence of efficacy. Full stop. That's a massive takeaway for everyone listening. Now, for some treatments, like orthoc, they say axial length alone is okay for monitoring because orthoc changes the refraction anyway. But the main message is, you can't just rely on the glasses prescription number to know if you're truly controlling the myopia.
Why not? What's the limitation of just refraction?
Because myopia progression, fundamentally, is about the eye getting longer, that axial elongation. A kid's refraction might seem stable for a bit, maybe due to environment or just how the eye is adapting. But if that eye is still stretching, getting longer, the risk for future problems like maculopathy or retinal detachment is still going up. Measuring axial length tells you directly about that physical change. It gives you a much more accurate, objective view of whether the control strategy is actually working.
So it gets to the underlying cause, not just the symptom.
Exactly. Now, obviously, getting the equipment to measure axial length is an investment for clinics. But understanding why it's so important really highlights its value for providing truly evidence-based care.
That definitely clarifies why axial length is becoming so central.
Okay, now for the really tricky part, especially for us doctors, the regulations. The article talks about how different bodies view myopia control, and it's complicated.
Yeah, this is maybe one of the most crucial bits in the whole paper, practically speaking. Especially in the US, myopia control isn't just a description. It has a specific regulatory meaning. When a product, a lens, a drug, whatever, gets approved and its official indication says it's for slowing the progression of myopia or myopia control.
Okay.
That means it went through rigorous clinical trials designed specifically to prove it works, and it's safe enough for that claim. We're talking big studies, randomized control trials, often long-term follow-up. It's a high bar. But here's the confusing part the article points out, right? You see products marketed under the sort of general banner of myopia management, but they don't have that specific myopia control approval. How does that work?
Exactly. And this is the nuanced lens we need to use here. Sorry, couldn't resist.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
A product might get marketing clearance,
Hmm.
say, as a medical device for myopia management, which, as we said, is broad. But that clearance might not have involved assessing or proving its ability to actually slow progression. So for you, the practitioner, you have to be super careful what you claim. You can't say a product slows progression if it hasn't been specifically approved for that. It's about honesty with patients, but also legal compliance.
Wow, okay. That's a minefield.
It can be. And it gets even more complex globally. What about Europe, for instance?
Right. How does CE marking fit in?
Well, in Europe, the CE marking system doesn't really distinguish between standard glasses and, say, special myopia control glasses when it comes to efficacy claims. Both types just need to meet the basic CE standards for safety, materials, manufacturing. So a lens designed for myopia control could get CE marked in Europe without needing clinical trials to prove it slows progression, as long as they don't make specific medical claims about slowing it down.
That's a huge difference from the US system.
Massive. It means if you practice internationally or prescribe products from different regions, you absolutely have to know the local rules. It highlights that even if a product is designed for control based on its mechanism, its regulatory status dictates what you can legally tell patients about its benefits.
That's incredibly important to understand. Okay, so we've defined correction, management, and control. How do they all fit together? The article has that helpful diagram.
It does, and it really ties it all together nicely. The figure basically shows that myopia control interventions, myopia correction, and that careful monitoring of refraction and axial length, those are the core clinical parts of overall myopia management.
Okay, so control and correction are tools within the management strategy.
Exactly. Think of management as the big umbrella strategy. Control and correction are key tactics under that umbrella, and monitoring guides how you use them.
Right, because myopia management is way bigger than just those clinical bits. It includes all that other stuff. Prevention, educating patients, risk assessments, screening, the lifestyle advice, and then the long-term view on complications. It's the whole shebang.
The whole shebang, exactly.
Yeah.
And while we clinicians do a lot of this, the article makes a good point that really effective myopia management, especially thinking about public health, it needs more than just us. It needs public health groups, schools, policymakers, researchers, all working together. It's a bigger societal effort, really.
That's a great perspective. Now, before we wrap up with the recommendations, the article mentions that debate about the word control itself. The concern that maybe it implies stopping myopia completely, which could give parents false hope. Some people suggested myopia progression management instead. What did the article conclude?
Yeah, it's a valid point people have raised. Does control sound too absolute? The authors acknowledge that concern. But their conclusion is pretty pragmatic. They argue that adding another term right now, like myopia progression management, would probably just add more confusion, not less.
Fair point. We're trying to simplify.
Right. And they make a really good comparison. Think about other medical fields. We talk about glucose control for diabetes or blood pressure control for hypertension. In those cases, control doesn't mean cure, does it? It means managing the condition, keeping it within limits, minimizing the bad effects. So they argue there's a strong precedent for using myopia control to mean slowing progression, not necessarily halting it cold. It just means we have to be really clear in our communication about what's realistic.
That comparison to diabetes or blood pressure control is actually really helpful for framing it with patients. Okay, so let's pull it all together. What are the final bottom line recommendations from the article on how we should use these terms in practice?
Okay, the clear takeaways are, first, myopia management. This should be your go-to term when talking with parents and patients, and in clinical guidelines. Why? Because it reflects that whole comprehensive approach we've been discussing.
Got it. Management for the overall strategy, then myopia correction.
Use myopia correction, specifically when you're talking about providing the optical fix, the glasses or contacts that make vision clear. And remember the key point. Correction is part of management, yes, but it's not enough by itself if someone is progressing or at high risk. It doesn't address the progression itself.
Right. Important distinction. And finally, myopia control.
Myopia control needs to be used carefully. Reserve it for clinical or research settings. It's specifically for those evidence-based interventions, the ones proven scientifically to slow progression or axial elongation. And if you're dealing with marketing materials, the article is firm. Using myopia control requires solid clinical trial data showing it works and the proper regulatory approval for that specific claim. No shortcuts. And, that reminder again, the evidence must include cycloplegic refraction and axial length data. Refraction alone just doesn't cut it for proving efficacy.
That rigor is essential for the credibility of myopia control. Okay, this has been incredibly clarifying. For everyone listening who wants to really dig into the details, remember, we've put a link to the study Myopia Correction, Myopia Control, and Myopia Management. Definitions and recommended usage right there in the podcast description.
Yeah, definitely check it out because truly understanding these definitions and maybe more importantly, the practical and regulatory nuances around them, it really does empower you as a clinician. It means clearer talks with patients, building more trust, and ultimately delivering more effective science-backed care. It helps lift the standard for all of us.
We really hope this deep dive has given you, well, a 2020 vision of these terms. Myopia correction, control, management, getting them straight is just so vital for clear communication and practice.
And here's a thought to leave you with. As our understanding of myopia keeps evolving, as new treatments keep coming, how might these definitions need to adapt? How will they shape regulations and public health efforts down the road? It's something to keep thinking about.
Absolutely. A field that's definitely not standing still.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. If you found this valuable, please do take a second to leave us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you use. It genuinely helps other eye care pros find the show.
Yes, please do. And hit that follow button so you catch our next deep dive. We'll be tackling more topics relevant to your practice.
Until next time, keep learning and keep that vision clear.